Mayan civilization once dominated the area of Central America, now occupied by El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, Belize, and later southern Mexico. The root of the Maya conjures images of ancient lost civilizations with hidden cities and jungle temples. While the magnificent ancient cities were abandoned and reclaimed by the jungle, the Mayan people continued to live in this area in small agricultural villages.
So put on your Indiana Jones hat and join us as we travel to Central America and trace the route of the Maya to El Salvador, Honduras, Guatemala, and Belize. See the treasures we found, the ancient temples, but especially the Mayan people and their culture.
We arrived in San Salvador, the capital of El Salvador, late in the day.
The central plaza is dominated by the National Palace and the contemporary design National Cathedral. Then we were off to our first Mayan ruins, a farming village called Joya de Seren.
It is believed to date from 900 BC. It was abandoned around 600 AD when it was buried under volcanic ash, preserving a record of how they lived.
The most direct route to Copan took us into Guatemala. At the museum in town, we saw a statue wearing a hat of the style still worn today.
At its high point in the mid-700s, there were 20,000 inhabitants. More than 1,000 structures exist in Copan. Most have not been restored. The buildings were covered in red-painted stucco. Small patches are still visible today. The superb carvings and sculptures on the temples and stelae are the most detailed in the Mayan world.
We spent hours roaming the grounds and climbing the temple stairs.
Copan has a large number of stelae. Most are in the Grand Plaza. These tall stone columns show images of rulers on the front and hieroglyphics on the side and back describing some important event. Often the king is shown in ceremonial costume such as the maize god.
From Copan, we headed on to Guatemala City.
The central plaza is surrounded by government and church buildings. Street vendors greeted us with smiling faces. In the city and on the road, we saw wildly decorated chicken buses whizzing by. The driver pays the owner a flat rate. By packing in more people and driving fast to make more runs, he can make more money.
These videos I downloaded from YouTube give you an idea of what it's like to ride on a chicken bus. Carlos flagged down this bus and we all got on, much to the surprise of the Mayan passengers.
On the way to Lake Atitlan, we stopped at Salvador, the capital of the area. Lucky for us, it was market day. The stands were loaded with local produce. The mariachi band strolling through added to the excitement of the day. Most of the people were in colorful traditional Mayan dress. The vibrant colors and designs were characteristic of the villages they came from.
We arrived at Lake Atitlan at sunset and could certainly see why the Mayans called it the place where the rainbow got its colors. Those aren't clouds you see on top of that mountain. Those are active volcanoes.
We traveled on to Antigua, the Spanish capital, from 1543 to 1776. The capital was moved after devastating earthquakes destroyed many church and government buildings. Today, with many of those buildings still unrepaired and abandoned, it is a major tourist attraction as a colorful reminder of the past. This is the Central America of our imagination. Off the main square, there were picturesque areas where the villagers have washed their clothing since colonial times. The local people, dressed in typical colorful clothing, made great photo ops.
Grand Circle and OAT sponsor schools in the host countries. Visiting these schools is often the highlight of our trip. The kids put on a performance for us. Then it was our turn. Carol taught them a finger play. We flew to Flores in northern Guatemala to visit Tikal, one of the major Mayan ruins. At height, in the 8th century, about 100,000 people lived there in an area almost the size of New York City. Most of the 3,000 structures have been left under the jungle growth to preserve them.
Through the trees we saw Temple 4, the tallest in Tikal at 212 feet. What a relief to see a wooden staircase that made it much easier to get to the top than climbing the steep stone. The view from there was surreal. It was used in the first Star Wars movie. You could see other temples rising through the jungle canopy. The larger one is called the Temple of the Great Jaguar, but it is better known as Temple 1. It is the tomb of one of the greatest Mayan rulers, Great Jaguar Paw. He built the smaller one, Temple of the Mask, across the Great Plaza in memory of his wife. He ruled for 50 years. During his reign, many of the great temples and pyramids were built.
We drove north to Orange Walk Town and boarded a boat on the New River for the 26-mile trip to the Mayan ruins at Lamanai. As we neared the ruins, we saw a crocodile sunning himself on a log. It was like an omen, since the name Lamanai means submerged crocodile. Just before we docked, we saw the top of one of the temples peeking through the jungle canopy.
Next was the high temple, over 100 feet tall.